I also thank the Vera Court Youth Leadership Council, who will be helping us host this evening. Our attendees include President Fred, Vice President Jora, Secretary Jessica, and Treasurer Gina. And we'll be leading questions throughout All right, before we get started, we have a tight agenda this evening. A few notes on the format. We will start with NPC questions that we will alternate through reading. The youth topic will be our last formal question, and then we'll turn it over to audience questions. So you may have noticed index cards on some of your chairs when you came in. There are pens at the back if you don't have one, and elsewhere around the room. And there are also additional index cards. So as you have questions throughout the evening, please write them down in your cards and hold them up, and we'll come collect them, and we'll get to your questions after the opening questions. And we'll be sure to close promptly near 8 p.m. so that everyone can get home safe and sound. So also, tonight we will be recording the event as well. So our reporter is over there, and you can see the video later on the Northside News website, as well as candidates' written responses to our questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Jessica to read our opening question.
Which of your individual qualities and experience distinguish you from the rest of candidates in this race?
Thank you. There we go. Thanks for the question. My name is Satya Rhodes Conway, and I think there's several things that distinguish me from the other candidates on the ballot. And one is my experience. I have spent the last 13 years working as the managing director of the Mayor's Innovation Project, which is a national learning network for mayors. So literally, mayors call me up and ask me for advice on policy and implementation of projects in their communities. I also served for 6 years on the city council here, representing the Northside, from District 12, used to be East High, up to Whitetail Ridge. Now it's a little smaller than that. And I'm currently on the Food Policy Council, and I just finished up a term chairing the Oscar Mayer Strategic Assessment Committee, which maybe we'll get a chance to talk about later. And the other thing that sets me apart, I think, is my collaborative leadership style. And one of the things that I learned in managing a team at work is that things go better if everybody has a chance to have their voice heard and be a part of the decision-making process. Doesn't mean we always agree, just means that we thrash it out before we move on in the direction that we choose. And then the last thing that I want to mention is that I feel like it's important for our next mayor to have political courage to do what is needed for this city. And I'm not running because I want to sit in an office or I want to run again for something else in the future. So I will bring that political courage to the mayor's office.
Thank you. My name is Paul Soglin. I'm the present mayor of Madison, and I'm hoping that you'll decide to re-elect me in this coming election. The most important thing that a mayor has to do is take on the serious challenges that confront the community and to look out into the future as to what's possible and make it happen. For example, if we go back a number of years ago, there was no city-sponsored community facility. But I was convinced after doing something previous to that, which was advocating the creation of planning councils, which led to the Northside Planning Council, which then led to a process of this facility which was built with both public and private funds. It's making something like that work. It's not just that though. It's something we see in this morning's paper. You know, a lot of people have been critical of me, saying I can't get along. Well, Evers GOP clash on cost. Governor seeks to curtail breaks for manufacturers. He's been in office less than a month. Are we going to now start telling him he should get along better with the right-wing control of the Republicans in both houses of the legislature and sell you out? Or is he going to stand up for principle? Stand up for what got him elected, committed to the people of the state, just as I am committed to the people of the city, and say, no, it's not going to happen like that anymore. That's the kind of leadership that's a little more complicated. Sarah and I have raised 3 daughters. They're now adults. In a democracy, being a parent refereeing with your kids is not the same as dealing with a Republican legislature or a city council.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening. Is this on? Good evening. We got it. Thank you all for being here. My name is Mo Cheeks. I am so impressed with all of you who came out in the weather. This is an amazing time in our city. I'm running for mayor of Madison because I love this city and because this is, in fact, a great place to live and a great place to raise a family. And yet we know that that's not true for everyone. Commonly, that's not true for folks that look like me. I'm running for mayor to work to address this persistent reputation we developed as a tale of 2 cities, in order to make this an inclusive, innovative, safe city for everyone. I'm bringing my unique experience as an alder on the city council representing the most diverse district in our city, from Tacoma to Ally Drive and everything in between. My experience as a minority business leader, leading in the technology sector in Madison as our county continues to grow, leading as an advocate for our kids and a past tutor in our schools, and frankly, as a father of little kids. This is personal to me. That's part of what's unique about this, is that in order for our city to move forward, in order for us to live up to our values as a progressive place, I'm running to expand what it looks like and what it feels like to be a Madisonian in 2019. And I ask for your vote on February 19th, but I ask for you to be a part of moving our community forward.
Thank you. My name is Raj Shukla, and what separates me in this race is that I'm one of only 2 candidates at this table that is running an organization right now. I'm the executive director of a statewide water policy group. I work in communities in Marathon County and in Rhinelander where there are actual Republicans to have disagreements with, unlike our city council. And we build coalitions to promote clean water policy. I do that by articulating a vision, by working with a talented team, by making difficult decisions when your budget priorities and your actual budgets don't mix. You have to make tough choices, and that is what we have in front of us right now on a whole host of issues. I also chair a city committee, and have for the last 4 years. It's called the Sustainable Madison Committee. And in my time, we've written legislation, we've built coalitions on council, we've passed the most aggressive climate change goals in the state, and other communities have followed suit. What I would say to you is that what distinguishes me is that I have a record of working as a civic leader and as a professional, of bringing people together across industry and activist communities, students and seniors, black people, white people, brown people, to find shared interests and make consistent progress moving forward.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Toriana Petaway, and I am Madison's next mayor. And what makes me qualified to run for office as Madison write-in candidate is that what I bring to the table and the other candidates don't, outside of our current mayor who has over 20 years of experience doing this, but I'm talking about what I bring to the table. Currently, I work with all 26 departments in leadership. I consult and I give guidance on human resource management. I give guidance on urban and region planning. I work with the alders and the councilmen. But not only do I do that, this is the second time I work for the city of Madison. I've also worked with our state. I've worked with the governments across the nation and municipalities. They come to me as a subject matter expert on all things racial equity, civil justice, and disparities, environmental justice, and they call me and ask me, what are we doing in Madison, because we are forerunners in doing social justice work on our policies, budget, and how do we do public participation in the community. I lead a team of 30 to 40 people. And when people call from universities, nonprofits, and for-profits, they're calling me, asking me, how do we do this in the city of Madison? And that's why I want to lead. My name is Toriana Petaway, and I am primed to lead this city. Because people are calling from across the nation, asking Toriana Petaway, how are you leading this work in the city of Madison?
Thank you.
Our next question is about development, and we're going to start with Mayor Soglin. Madison has long identified areas for development and offered development credits for builders in those areas. These often come with requirements for a certain density of affordable housing units, though the specific requirements for income can vary widely. Often these redevelopment zones fall in areas like the Northside where more land is available, but where there's also already a high density of low-income residents, which can impact school and neighborhood resources. What is your development vision specifically for the North Side?
Well, I think it's very obvious that the most important thing right now in terms of the North Side is what happens with the future of Oscar Mayer and the surrounding areas. But also, we have to take into consideration the public market, which is at the entrance to the North Side, as well as the airport, and I do want to add, even though it's relatively small, the feed kitchen. The key to growing an economy in our community has got to change, and it is changing. Let me just go back with that 1 minute I've got left. The history of our city is we used to have 9 public sector employers or in the health industry, along with Oscar Mayer. That's changing. Now we are going to see a radical change in the direction of Madison's economy, focusing on private entrepreneurship. It's critical as we develop these plans that we work with people of color, women. We just made a commitment this week in terms of Kiva, $50,000 a year for 3 years in helping to support women-owned businesses. But one of the essential focuses of our food program is not just the importance of getting nutrition, fresh foods and vegetables to the people of our community, but also fostering, as we have through our Market Ready program, for which 2/3 of the prospective businesses are minority and women-owned, focusing on that as a road to economic success.
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Cheeks.
The North Side obviously has a tremendous amount going for it. One of the things that the North Side is poised for is to continue to build off of its success as a food hub. And so one of my visions for the North Side is to build off of this neighborhood's commitment to food, to access to food, the success of the feed kitchen, and develop a food distribution hub. I know that the Alder of the neighborhood, Alder Campbell, has been pushing this initiative, and it's a fantastic one. It's a great opportunity for us to promote jobs and take advantage of the strengths of the neighborhood as it already exists. The other important thing is that, as the North Side continues to grow, it's critical that we maintain housing affordability on the North Side, and that we prioritize transportation access for folks to be able to get to work any place throughout the city. And so that's going to be critical for the future of the North Side.
There are 2 issues that are kind of interlocked, and that's land use policy and that's transportation, that are relevant to this question. I think it's very important to develop a policy in this city that eliminates exclusionary zoning and allows for different types of housing to be built all over the city, that folks from all different parts of the income scale can access. It feels like to many of us that there are clusters, pockets of Madison where homes are more affordable than in other parts of the city. And I think that there are things we can do from a regulatory level to sort of level the playing field and allow for more varied types of housing for more people in more parts of the city. But I think about something else that I heard recently from members of the transportation department, looking at the Oscar Mayer plant as a possible hub or a possible satellite site for BRT expansion. And I used to live just blocks from that site. And the idea of what that could do to revitalize the area from a retail expansion point of view, from other job options that could develop because of expanded transportation, is vitally important. But I think we should actually go a step further than just BRT. We should be looking incrementally over time at making a fair, free system of transportation for people. Looking at our buses as extensions of our roads and not just alternatives to cars, and making sure that a $2 fare is not what keeps someone looking for a job from a job interview.
So the north side, because of our 2 lakes, poses a lot of different challenges. We are between 2 lakes, and Madison is built around the isthmus. And to make sure that all residents in our community has equal access to housing, transportation, economic prosperity, some of the things that I would do to address shared prosperity on all sides of the community, but this question directly impacts the north side. One of the things that I have been repeatedly saying as the Madison's next mayor is we really need to focus on how we work with Public Works and our Title VI compliance when we aren't applying contracting for equity in everything that we do. If we work with what we already have access with and make sure that upstream in our RFP processes that we are making sure that our minority, our women, and our disadvantaged vendors have access to services and contracts and purchasing, that they will be able to compete fairly and make sure that these things are integrated in our housing, in our transportation for those who need services the most. We don't have to create what's already in place. We're just not doing. People are risk averse and they're not making hard decisions. I was hired as the equity coordinator to address these issues.
Thank you.
I feel like half the room can't actually see us. Yeah, so I'm going to stand up so you can see me. I spent the last year working on the Oscar Mayer Strategic Assessment Committee, and so a lot of my vision of development on the north side stems out of that process and the objectives that we set. And I invite you all to find and read the report that the council just passed last night. But in brief, one of the things that we heard very clearly from folks on the north side is that we need more places for youth to be, and we need more activity opportunities, and to have opportunities for kids to hang out and for the community to gather. I think we also, sort of the big part of my vision for development is to bring bus rapid transit to the north side and make sure that we can access the airport and get downtown really quickly on transit. I think we also need to be looking at, certainly the Oscar Mayer property will redevelop, but hopefully also the Northside Town Center will redevelop, and we need to look at if that is wildly successful, and it should be, how do we make sure that folks aren't going to be displaced by that development and the community actually benefits from it? And we lay out some ideas for that in the report. And then I think it's important for us to preserve existing affordability, and one of the things I'd like to do is make sure that we can use the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to preserve existing affordable housing and helping that be a safe and healthy place to live, in addition to then also trying to build housing units at every level of affordability so we can help to ease the market.
Kimber will ask our next question.
Crime has become a major topic of the conversation in the city of Madison. As shootings and homicides increase, the north side is no different. Neighbors are holding community meetings to try to cope with incidents or struggle with how to do so as citizens. What are the top 2 things Madison should do as a city to promise safety for all? Mr. Cheeks, will you start, please?
Yes, thank you for the good question. So, let's start by acknowledging that everyone should have the opportunity to feel safe in their own neighborhood. And getting this question from a young person, I think, should really pull on us to recognize that everyone in this community, whether you're old or young, whether you've been here a long time or not, desires to be able to feel safe. I remember a couple of summers back when we had a series of shootings. I was talking to a detective as we're looking at a list of faces of suspects, and the detective said, you know what? Shame on these men for being associated with these shootings, but shame on us as a community for not intervening earlier. Because I've got papers on these kids when we knew that they were falling through the cracks 10 years ago, 15 years ago. The two things that are going to be most critical for us is investing in young people, investing in mentorship programs for particularly young men that are at risk. And secondly, expanding the work that I've led on in the development of the 15-point plan that builds a comprehensive strategy for proactive public safety and peer support and reentry support. We know that a large preponderance of crime is happening by folks that are repeat offenders. And so in order for us to be serious about reducing crime and violence, that's the second thing we have to do.
Thank you.
So much of what we know about crime is that the way to stop it is not after it's happened, it's well before it's happened. And that many of the drivers of the crime that we see are inability to find housing that you can afford, inability to find transit that you can afford to get to a job, basic stuff that can disrupt a family's life and can jeopardize a whole community. I think one of the most important things that we as a community need to do for a long-term solution to some of the crime that we are seeing is focus very tightly on the ages of birth to 3, long before a crime happens. That's a moment in life when each of us, 90% of our neurological development happens in those critical 3 years. And if we can provide wraparound services to both a child and that child's family at that critical moment, nutrition service, literacy services, helping find access to a job, helping get training, we can stabilize a family, we can stabilize a community going forward. And from there build with mentorship programs, with other options for young people to get involved with, than some of what we're seeing across Madison in the form of gangs and other activities that we do not want here.
Thank you.
Everything that Raj said is spot on. What I would add to that is that you definitely do need to start from birth to 3. You also need to recognize that young people want to have a sense of belonging. Parents are overworked, they're working 2 to 3 jobs, employment and housing, transportation all goes together. Families need real wages. I've been saying from the very beginning, $15 an hour wages is not a sustainable wage. In the city of Madison, you need anywhere from $20 to $22 an hour wage to survive in this community. Children, under my leadership, we need to stop referring to them as at-risk youth and reinvest in volunteer efforts in the schools. Kids coming out of the juvenile corrections center would be paired up with employment in my administration as a job training, on-the-job experience, because they need something to look forward to besides jail. Let's break the school to prison pipeline. Real solutions. Real solutions. They need belonging. You want to stop crime in the community? Give them something to belong to.
Thank you.
So you asked for 2 specific things. It's a good question, thank you. So one specific thing is I think we need to take a public health approach to violence, and it's clear that just criminal justice approach isn't getting us where we need to be. So that means, in part, making sure that folks have access to mental health services and that we're acknowledging and dealing with addiction issues in the community. A decent amount of the crime in the community is driven by opiate addiction, and we need to make sure that we deal with that. The other specific thing that I think we need to do is focus on supporting families in order to build stronger neighborhoods. And a lot of that does look like employment, but I think a lot of that just looks like hope and making sure that folks can see themselves as connected to the community, and particularly young people can see themselves as having opportunity. And so I go back to what we were talking about on the last question is, where do youth on the north side have an opportunity to connect with activities? And where do they get to gather in a space that's for them? And how do we connect them to opportunity and hope so that they feel like they have something to do that's not criminal or against the law? I do think a lot of this is about supporting young people and offering them the opportunities that they need to have a successful life in the long term.
Thank you.
When we address the issue of public safety, we're focused in two different areas. First, there is the long-term view, and that's why we've adopted a program through the City of Madison Public Health Department to treat violence and trauma as a public health issue. That's why we're engaged with the schools in programs like the out-of-school time programs that we've got here in Madison. That is why we're focused on looking at alternatives to the criminal justice system with MARI, our Madison Area Recovery Addiction Initiative, which does not send people into the criminal justice system if they're addicted to drugs, but puts them into a recovery program. That's why we've got our Northside initiative, the early childhood zone, dealing with those issues. But while we're doing all of that, we have to deal with the initial problem. We have to deal with what's going on right now with the lives of the people we care about. That's why we set up our program of peer support. And think about this. From May of 2016 till early August of 2017, we had almost one homicide a month. We had 14 homicides involving young African American males, most of which involved them both as the assailant and as the victim. In the last 15 months, we've reduced it to 3, but we're not done yet, not till we make it 0.
Thank you.
My name is Fred, and I grew up going to Mayoral. When I was in elementary school, we had Life as a Boy program, but when I got to middle school, it stopped because there wasn't any funding. The program was important to me because I got to hang out with my friends and learn some life skills. I want to know how you guys will support young male in the community.
I think I started this one. When I began my career, it was through an AmeriCorps program. And AmeriCorps is kind of a domestic Peace Corps. And it was young people a little younger than you, young people between the ages of 18 and 30 who were working together on building their community together. And it was where I found direction in my life. And I think we can take some of the principles of that program, AmeriCorps, and apply them to some of the challenges that young people are feeling here. The good friend from that program, his name's Reggie Moore, he directs the Office of Violence Prevention for the city of Milwaukee. He started a program called Urban Underground there. And the whole premise was, how do we engage young people, high school age, maybe even middle school age, in their community, give them an actual voice and an actual opportunity to change their community. I'd like to do that as mayor by including youth voices in city committees. Making sure that young people, like the young people sitting here, actually have a say in the decision making that affects their lives directly. I'd also like to see if there are ways that we can bring service corps like that designed for young people in high school age to give back to their community. Because as we've heard here a couple of times, giving young people an opportunity to meaningfully change their reality and improve their reality is one of the best things that we can do for young people and for ourselves.
That's absolutely wonderful.
There's a duck up here.
It's distracted by the duck.
That's a wonderful question. Youth engagement is absolutely important now more than ever. We have girls fighting in the schools, we have young men. I have a son sitting in the audience that's absolutely always feeling displaced and always asking about his relevance in his community. One of the things that I would definitely do when I'm there is make sure that I'm always engaging the voice of our young Black and brown men. When I worked at the State Bar of Wisconsin as the Wisconsin Law Foundation Director, we ran what was called We the People. And We the People actually taught young people how to engage in civics. And one of the things that Rod said is that what I see is that young people actually need to be engaged in council, having representation from all of the schools. We really do need to have these young people sitting at the table with us and learning at the table with us on what's important to them. And having them having a voice on the issues that's happening in their communities, and they need to have counsel. And that's what I would do, because they need to be informing us on what's important to them. We are the people, just like we are all Madison. And that's what I did when I was at the state legislature, and that's what I would do with our young people, because they need to inform us on what's important.
Thanks for your question and for sharing your experience. There's a couple of things that I think I'd like to do as mayor. And so the first is to collaborate with schools and with our excellent community centers so that programs like the one that you were in can get funding that they need. But I think it's also important for us to think about supporting programming that comes up from the community. Madison has a long history of funding community services and tends to be towards organizations, and I'm just going to be real here, right? It's larger organizations that are run by white people. And I think we need to start looking at resourcing organizations and programs that come from the community that are helping people in the community. And so things like mentoring positives comes up out of the community. We should be supporting things like that. And I think that we ought to be guided more by youth. I'm not going to say that that means that you have a young person sitting on every committee, because I'd rather ask you guys how you'd like to engage and whether the model that you have at Barra is one that we could replicate citywide, or how you think that it would be best to engage youth voices in city government and be guided by that.
Well, I want to go back to that headline, Heber's GOP clash on cost. One of the areas where we have clashes in city government is the allocation of resources and what we do in terms of young people. I want to talk very frankly about this building and what we've got here, because I was very instrumental in it as I left my last couple of years in office in the 90s, committing the city to this facility as a neighborhood facility, particularly with a focus on young people. As I left office, I joined and collaborated in a private fundraiser. And then, when this facility opened about 14, 15 years ago, I can't remember the exact date, it was basically a facility that had very little programming for young people. And so the last 6, 7 years, you've seen a change. You've seen a change in priority with greater programming for young people. And that's that OST, that out of school time, which is the majority of the waking hours for kids, after school, weekends, over the vacation periods. It's a combination of resources in which we need greater equity. We work so hard, and we've now got hundreds and hundreds, thousands of kids who didn't have summer program jobs, now working and able to carry over with those jobs part-time during the school year. It's the focus of what we're doing in terms of funding the new facility that we're planning over at Rhindell Park. That's the kind of commitment I make.
Thank you.
Before I was elected to the city council, my public service was tutoring in our schools. I tutored twice a week for a couple of years in high school, actually on the other side of town at Mayoral. And one of the most common conversations that I got into with young people is, hopes and dreams about the future. And as you might suspect, not that complicated. Young men, particularly young men of color, want to be able to have a job at a young age, oftentimes frankly to help mom pay bills, want to have hope for their future, want to have the opportunity to go to college, and they want to feel safe in their neighborhood. They too often feel afraid of the police, and they say, I don't want to feel afraid, but I am, right? And so, as mayor, some of my priorities are going to be investing in expansion of mentorship for our city. Every young person should have the opportunity to have a mentor. That was transformational for my life, and we know that makes a huge difference for young people's trajectory. Every young person should have the opportunity to have an internship, summer youth employment at a minimum, if they want to. And there's opportunity for the mayor to work directly with the private sector to ensure that we're creating internships throughout the city. And third, every young person should start life with hope for their future. As mayor, one of the things that I'll establish is a Cradle to Career program. One of the big implementations for that is a college savings account, so that every young person starts school with an account to help them save for their future.
Thank you.
All right, now we'll move on to audience questions. For the audience questions, candidates will have 60 seconds to answer. Jamie, are you answering or asking that first question?
This one is for Toriana. How would you improve the emergency transports in Madison, like police, ambulance, and fire departments, to result in less injuries in Madison?
Can you repeat that again?
How would you improve the emergency transports in Madison, like police, ambulance, and fire departments, to result in less injuries in Madison?
Less injuries to the police people or to residents?
Residents.
So one of the things that we could do to make sure that there's less injuries, public safety is always important for both those who are receiving services and for those who are providing services. One of our biggest budget costs to our city budget is to those providing services, to our firefighters and to our police staff. And their ability to provide services depends on their health and their physical ability. And so one of the things that I would want to make sure is that they are well maintained, that they have the proper equipment that they have, and that we're making sure that the cars that they have are well maintained, the vehicles are well maintained, and that they are safe in the community. Making sure that our streets are well lit, our roads are well paved, but also the community itself is safe. One of the things that I would really like to do is make sure that we have more community engagement, maybe having a lot more activity with residents to engage and also be like self-reporting when things are going on, more public participation to share and build trust in the neighborhood so that it can be more collaborative opportunities to share in the community for safety.
Okay, wasn't sure if that was just for Tori. So one of the things that we've been working on in my day job, so again, I run the Mayor's Innovation Project, which is a national money network for mayors, and we've been in conversations with the International Association of Firefighters recently about ways that cities, particularly mayors, and their firefighters can work better together. And there's a lot there, I won't tell you all of it, but one of the things that has come up, which I think is really important and I'd like to look at as Mayor here in Madison, is the trauma that our first responders are exposed to, and how do we support them better through the availability of mental health services and the recognition that as a first responder, you may very well be exposed to a situation where you get PTSD, and that ought to be covered. and that services ought to be accessible for our first responders there. So I think that's one way that we can make things safer for everyone in Madison, is making sure that we take care of our first responders in their own mental and physical health.
I wasn't sure that that's where that question was leading, but let me just say we have one of the finest employee assistance programs in the United States. We've actually doubled the staffing in the last couple of years, and that staff is not only available to City of Madison responders in times of safety and emergencies, but we make that staff available, as we did last year in tragedy in Sun Prairie, as we work and collaborate with surrounding communities. But the way I had read the question really goes to, I don't know so much as artificial intelligence, but we are developing a program which will not only afford greater opportunities for our buses to traverse swiftly through the city, but also emergency vehicles. We will eventually have a system of sensors so that when an emergency vehicle hits an intersection, for example, it will automatically send a signal for everybody to stop, as my time is up now. But I want to remind you, we were just evaluated as the second safest pedestrian city of the 100 largest in the U.S.
So in my day job, so I'm the Vice President of Business Development for a global software company. We do data quality, big data, and data analytics. And addressing concerns like this is the sort of thing that we help organizations and governments do all across the world. In order to plan proactively for increased safety in a situation like this, what Madison will have to start doing is bringing together data, vehicle-to-vehicle communication data, GPS data, traffic pattern information, etc., in order to anticipate how to deploy emergency vehicle systems and emergency vehicles, and how to, as the mayor actually was referencing, how to control lights. So the big shift that we're going to have to make as a city is modernizing the way that we operate. And with my experience doing that with companies all across the world, and for that matter, folks like the state of Wisconsin, that's exactly what we're going to do.
So there are two things. Recognizing that first responders are dealing with sometimes a different set of issues than used to be present in the past. Gun violence is something that is far more prevalent now than it was even when I moved here in the 90s. Opiate addiction issues are far more common an issue for first responders to respond to than they used to be. Expanding within the police force and fire service the ability, the capacity to deal with mental health emergencies or addiction issues is something vital. We've started that process here, and I think we should build on that. But the other thing we should do is expand our coverage of ambulance service in particular. We have one part of town right now, the southeast part of town, that doesn't have the same ambulance coverage as other parts of town. And now this meets a standard. 95% of the city gets ambulance coverage within 5 minutes. But that means we're sacrificing 5% of the community. And that isn't acceptable.
Would you support a pool connected to the Warner Park Community Recreational Center if the Circle of Friends raised funds to build it?
I'm so shocked that that question came up tonight. Well, many of you know that I was asked this question as an alder over and over again. I actually participated in one of your walks, Dorothy. I think that it would be great to have a pool on the north side. I think we may need to have some conversation about exactly what kind of pool and perhaps the location of it, but it's a conversation that I've been in for a while now, and I'm happy to continue it. I will say that we have to make sure that we balance investments across the city, but if you've ever been to Goodman Pool in the summertime, it's a pretty amazing place, and it's a great place for kids, and it's a great place for the community to come together. So it'd be nice to have something like that on the north side.
Thank you.
There's a time for leadership and there's a time to follow. And in deciding what happens here at Warner Park, I've learned over the years that you've got to follow more than you lead. There are so many conflicting interests in terms of the use of this really wonderful space, which is probably the most diverse park within the city, given its shoreline activities, given the relationship to the marshes, given the activities that go on here at the center, and the active participation of sports further over. I would love to see a swimming pool here at Warner Park. I always have. What I think I need, and I think every mayor needs, is resolution within the larger community that that's what we want. But if we can get that agreement, I'm there. I got my trunks.
Thank you.
I'd love to support the pool on the north side here. I think that what's going to be really critical is engaging the community in the design and development, and of course in the fundraising of it. As an alder, one of the most exciting experiences that I've had has been working closely with my constituents to develop a new park in the Allied Drive neighborhood. In the first year that I was on the council, a group of young people came up to me and said, "We need a basketball court here." And it did take years, and it took some creative partnerships, and it took some serious community engagement. But we ended up developing one of the coolest parks in the city. It's a little town I think we're really proud of. I know Parks Department's really proud of, and I'd love to be able to replicate that if we get ready to develop a pool over here.
Thank you.
Or save some time. Yes, of course. Yes.
I think it was about week 3 when I received correspondence from Dorothy and the Northside committee on the pool. And then I received some corresponding emails from someone that I worked with when it was IHN, now the Road Home, when I was the homeless coordinator for my church in partnership with Christ Presbyterian. I was the homeless coordinator for Fountain of Life and partnering with Christ Presbyterian. She had reached out to DC Driver who knew her. And so yes, I am in support of the pool because I got the whole blueprint, the whole set of meetings and everything else. And that was a conversation that was about 3.5 years ago. Long overdue. Kids in this community need something to look forward to and not have to go to the south side for a pool.
Thank you.
Madison has a reputation for history of unfairness towards non-white residents. What can be done to make Madison more fair to our residents of color?
Probably one of the greatest responsibilities of a mayor is economic equity, and that's the principal responsibility of city government. We, of course, do give great support to the Madison School District, and we're trying to work with them through the out-of-school time program. we're also trying to work with them as we develop strategies within the neighborhoods. But I want to point out, it really makes a difference who the mayor is. And I want to talk about two different important economic markers. One is unemployment, and the other is income. When I left office following 1997, African American income was greater than when I returned to office in 2011. Since 2011, we have seen that African American median household income go up over $10,000 and unemployment drop from 26% to less than 7%. There are still inequities, but we devised strategies that made a difference.
I would like to go next. And I'm glad that you led with that. Today, I got my 4th predetermination hearing. Since I've applied and announced that I was going to run for mayor, I've had letter after letter of disciplinary hearings. Because I was hired to address disparities in the city, so now I'm going to be faced possibly with unemployment as an African American candidate running for mayor, called out to address inequities in the city. I have not been able to do that very well. I don't know if you know about that. But I got this one today for contacting the media on my disparities. I can't talk to the media, but it's part of my candidacy. The media asks me questions. Let's talk about racial disparities in this community.
Mr. Cheeks.
Thank you. This is an important question. It's an important question that we've been talking about for years. In fact, we talked about the race equity report as sort of foundational, but we've had reports going back to the 80s that have been telling us the same thing. Where this starts is having a mayor with a sense of urgency, not to argue data, not to dispute personal stories, but to acknowledge that this reality of inequality, this persistent tale of two cities, is real. In order to begin to address it, we have to work closely with communities that are most affected. We have to build off of authentic relationships, and we have to start at the earliest ages. And so it's a tremendous missed opportunity right now that we don't have a mayor with a voice on education and youth-related issues. A partnership with the schools is a critical place to start. As mayor, I'll deepen a meaningful relationship with our schools. And as I said earlier, beginning with a college savings account for every young person is how we set a level bar to really raise the expectation for all of our young people to be able to be successful here.
A couple of weeks ago, we were at a forum, and the mayor closed by saying that Madison is not a racist city, but there is racism here. He has not seen the email I've gotten since we've started this race. What I want to say to this room, and I think to rooms all over this community, is that we all do, in fact, brown, black, white, everyone else, all do, in fact, have to understand and accept our personal stake in this question and our personal responsibility for the world that we live in and the world that we want to make. I believe, as mayor, one of the things that we need to do is actually spread decision-making power to young people, for instance, as part of our city committee structure. I believe that one of the things that we as a mayor want to do is focus on early childhood care to start a good foundation for every child from day one and not just grade one. But it starts with us taking a personal stake and a personal investment in changing the situation.
One of my favorite mayors said that America can be a racist country or it can be a great country. I think Madison faces the same choice. We need to, and it is my responsibility as a white person to call out and work against institutional and structural racism. And I do that every day. It's part of who I am, and it will be part of who I am as mayor. We also need to make sure that we vastly improve the way we do community engagement at the city. One of the things that we did in the Oscar Mayer strategic assessment process was do some very specific outreach to particularly communities of color here on the North Side. And I think we can learn from that and build on it more broadly in the city. And then finally, I think we need to recognize the assets that exist in communities of color here in Madison, lift them up, and invest in those communities.
Thank you.
Our next audience question will start with Alder Cheeks, am I right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
In light of this summer's flooding, how will you prepare Madison for the effects of climate change?
Awesome question. So we spent this summer being reminded that climate change is not something of the future, that this is a present day concern. And so it starts with acknowledging that we have to take action immediately. On the City Council, we took immediate steps. It wasn't in the budget, and we added over $5 million. The City Council added over $5 million to begin to acquire land and invest in stormwater management planning so that we can make our city safer as we prepare for the future of climate change. The other immediate action that I'll take as mayor is the establishment of a deputy that serves the mayor that's focused on the environment. We need to ensure, just as we have with racial equity, we need to ensure that we have someone whose job it is to be working collaboratively with departments all throughout the city, with the county, with the state, and making sure that our decisions are keeping the environment in mind.
Thank you. Mr. Shukla.
And I'll start by being a mayor who's committed to the environment. I chair right now the Sustainable Madison Committee I have for 4 years. And in that time, we've passed multiple pieces of legislation. One of which is to commit this community to 100% renewable energy. I believe we need to get to that goal by 2045 as a community. That will bring cost-effective energy to people that is also clean and healthy for our world and our community here. And let me give you an example why that is important. The #1 killer by natural cause of people in Dane County is heat stroke. Heat stroke. That is people who can't afford air conditioning. These are folks who are older sometimes. These are folks who are children and vulnerable. If we can provide clean, cost-effective energy as this world warms, we can help people in a direct way right here in our own community.
Ms. Pettyway.
So one of the things that I would do right away is work on our retrofitting our existing buildings to be more energy efficient with how we use our technology in our building, with our lights, with our air conditioning, with our energy sources, with the computers that we use, and making them more environmental friendly, making sure that they shut down and come on at a certain time when people are in the building, making them smarter. The other thing that I would do is make sure that as we have buses in our community, that we have outlined area transfer points in a regional approach so that we're using less transportation with our mass rapid transit. We already have that coming in where we have electric buses coming and having a regional approach so that there are less cars coming into the community, having different sectors in the community where folks from outside can take buses instead of commuting in their cars.
The question is how to prepare for climate change. We need to do a complete review of all city infrastructure and operations based on the smart work that's already been done by folks at UW on what Wisconsin, and particularly urban areas in Wisconsin, are facing in the new climate. The floods that we saw last year are just one example of what's coming, but to speak specifically about that, we need to flip our entire approach to stormwater from one where it falls and we try and move it as quickly as possible to one where it falls and we try and keep it there for as long as possible using green infrastructure like trees and rain gardens and rain barrels and cisterns and biofiltration facilities and green roads and on and on and on down the list. This technology exists, being used very successfully all around the country. Madison's terribly behind on this, and it's time for us to catch up with cities like Milwaukee and Grand Rapids and Philadelphia, and you get the message.
And Madison's not terribly behind, but we better understand exactly what Alderman Cheeks was talking about. I've been listening to this for several debates now. The capital budget is prepared and submitted in the fall. It was already prepared and submitted when the August 17th floods hit. It didn't just miraculously end up that the council had a $5 million vote to amend the budget. Not wanting to wait till 2020, what I did was I brought the engineering staff together. And let me parenthetically say, there already was some funding for flooding. I brought the engineering staff together. We then developed the $5 million program, which could only be enacted by the council as an amendment to the budget, and we found the funding for the $5 million. And that is why we're not wasting a year, but we're getting to work right now to address the two different kinds of flooding that we experienced last year.
Jorah has our next question.
What is your opinion of the Madison Public Market project?
I think it's a beautiful concept. I think the idea of providing a way to train and offer space to entrepreneurs in the food space and entrepreneurs who are of different backgrounds than many of the people who find success here in Madison. Women, people of color. I think it's a beautiful concept. Where it gets tricky is if we sacrifice investments in other areas in order to build a public market. So the question the next mayor is going to have in years to come is whether we are better served creating a transit system for everybody or a public market that serves very well and very nobly a small subset of people. That's a question that I am grappling with. I think we are moving in this direction. I think in order to truly make it effective, we will need to work with other partners like the county to create a food hub, to make sure that things are operating at peak efficiency.
Thank you.
I think the public market innovation is a very good first start to increase small business opportunities for communities who haven't had an opportunity to prosper. One of my platforms is shared prosperity. We want to make sure that we are creating incubators of success for people who haven't necessarily seen themselves and having assets in this community. That's how you create wealth. That's how you get families out of poverty, and that's how you create a generation of people who are invested and reinvest in the community that they live in. One of the things that I would love to see, and one of the things that I would do as mayor, is make sure that that cycle continues. Because if you have a family who's never had assets before, they will build that with their children. They plant seeds.
Thank you.
I love a good public market. I think my favorite one is in Cleveland. And it'd be great to have one in Madison. And I'm very appreciative of the work that the committee has done. I actually served on that committee when I was on that council. And particularly that the group doing the fundraising is doing now. I am a big fan of the Market Ready program, and I'd like to see if we can learn from how that program is structured and has been successful and replicate it in other sectors, not just in the food sector. And I think we should have a public market, but I think we need to have a conversation about how much the city needs to support that. I would like to, perhaps more importantly, build the food sector here on the north side by trying to put a cross-docking food terminal at the Oscar Mayer site so that we can bring in produce from the surrounding area and get it more effectively to our institutions and grocery stores in Madison.
Thank you.
We are sitting in the middle of one of the richest agricultural centers of the world. And in fact, other than state government, the university, it was agriculture, food and beverage that created our economy. It's almost unnatural for us not to capture that, recapture that today. A public market does a number of things. First, it provides fresh, wholesome food to the residents who shop there. Secondly, it contributes in terms of encouraging more producers. Third, it helps with aggregation. The site may not be at the public market for the trucking that former Alderwoman Dr. Rhodes mentioned, but that's another aspect to it. It then creates the great economic and entrepreneurial opportunity for those vendors. But it also means the Market Ready program. And when the Market Ready program was devised, we didn't know that the first success was going to be here on the north side when we supported the Willie Street Co-op replacing Pierce's.
Thank you.
So I think the heart of the question is, should city taxpayers support the development of the public market, and to what extent? It is certainly the case that we are well positioned to be able to be a hub for a food economy. We have been for a long time. We are in a myriad of ways. The idea of a public market at this stage is often talked about as an entrepreneurial opportunity. Well, there's a lot of things that the city could do to invest in supporting entrepreneurship. In order for us, if the city is going to play a direct role in financially supporting something that is a entrepreneurial investment, it's going to require leadership that understands what it takes to develop a business and what it takes to make a private investment successful. That's what I'll bring as mayor, is the scrutiny to ensure that we're setting ourselves up for success with a significant taxpayer investment.
Thank you.
What do you personally see as the best use of the Oscar Mayer site?
Well, I had the opportunity of providing training to the committee after the purchase of the Oscar Mayer site, and one of the things that I would want to see is more housing go there, but more mixed-use space that would incorporate space for our youth, because youth currently do not have adequate facilities or spaces for them. So when I was visiting Dallas to see my family, they had this wonderful park that had these big, tall chess sets and big, tall, oversized things that, in that park, there were all kinds of kids from the ages, well, not kids, kids and youth, from the ages of, like, my son is 10, but up to 26, was probably the oldest person I saw in the park. But they created a wonderland for young people, and they said that young people created that space. That's one of the things that I would love to see in that space, a space that's created by young people. That's a start.
this feels like an unfair question for me since I spent the last year thinking about it. I think on the site itself, I want to see the cross-docking food terminal that I talked about. I want to see a metro transit site for bus rapid transit. I want to move the transfer point out to Packers. And then I think we need a mix of commercial and office and site-serving retail. But more importantly than the actual use on the site, I think we need to see infill redevelopment into that parking lot and bring the buildings up to the street so that we can activate Packers more and we can activate commercial as well. In the larger picture, I'd like to see whatever happens on that site spur redevelopment down Pennsylvania and up Packers and over commercial to Sherman, while making sure that we protect the wetlands, but that we can use that, all of that land in there has a higher and better use. And I'd like to use the Oscar Mayer property redevelopment as a lever to make sure that we get something more exciting happening in that whole area.
When we found out that Oscar Mayer was closing, I was the one who was in the responsible position that had to make some decisions and show some leadership. And the message was this: while there could be housing as part of a peripheral development on the site, it had to be very clear that the site was not to be used for storage, but it was to be used for activity, a commercial use that created great jobs. And it was that message that had to be sent out so that whoever came in and purchased the site understood the values of this community and what we expected. We are on that path now, and we will continue on that path, and hopefully we will see a mixed-use development along the lines of the committee that's been working on this. I appointed a very diverse committee, a very bright committee, and I think we're going to get great results.
When we found out about the closing of Oscar Mayer, it was too late. We should have found out about that a long time ago. We should have been ahead of that. As mayor, I'll maintain the relationship with the private sector that would allow us to be in a greater position of strength. One of the things that we need to prioritize for this neighborhood, for this site, is jobs. The report that the committee put together is fantastic, and I think one of the things that Satya mentioned that's specifically attractive that I definitely want to see us accomplish is having that site be a transit hub. And so this is going to be an opportunity for us to build vibrant sites that really live up to our values as a community, where folks will have access to jobs and housing, and most importantly, it'll allow us to spur a strong redevelopment for the neighborhood.
When I think about that site, yes, mixed-use development, housing, retail, commercial space, yes, a transit hub that can hopefully be a focal point for multiple modes of transit, be it bus lines or cycling facilities. But I also think about something kind of strange. I think about roof space. And the reason I think about roof space is I think whatever redevelopment happens on this large plot of land, it should incorporate generating renewable energy. For this community here or for the broader community. This is an opportunity as we redevelop to redevelop in a way that is responsible to the environment and that meets our objectives around social equity as well. I have a green growth agenda. You can see it on my website, rajshukla.com. And we talk a bit about how we can use redevelopment as a lever to advance our other objectives, environmental and social.
Thank you.
How would you improve the transit system as it is on the north side? What specific changes would you make?
That's a great question, thank you. We need to finally implement bus rapid transit in this community. We've been talking about it for 30 years. And as part of that, we need to make sure that it comes to the north side sooner than later. As both a bus commuter and former Northside alder, I'm keenly aware of how hard it is to get around via transit in this part of town, and how few options you have in terms of where you can go on the bus. In my time on the council, we worked hard to make sure that when Pierce's closed, and even before that, when the larger grocery store closed, that people could get over to other grocery stores on the bus by rerouting some of the lines. But the principle of what we need to do is get a rapid transit line up here, and then we need to reroute buses so they cover more of the north side and frankly more of the city, and more hours in the day, so that they don't just serve folks who work 9 to 5, but you can take the bus 24 hours.
When we talk about rapid transit, let's distinguish between rail and bus, because we wasted the better part of a decade on rail, which wasn't going to do anything for this area of the city. It's only been in the last 4 or 5 years that we've seriously looked at bus rapid transit. The concept is to have a bus system that does work like rail. Everything from platforms that make in and out egress accessible to the fact that you don't have to worry about fare boxes. The important thing is understanding this, that while a public market might be a $4 million public commitment and $4 million private, bus rapid transit is over $100 million, and it can only be set up with a different system of financing. We need a regional transit authority. We're not the only ones in the state. We have to have a mayor who's going to collaborate and work with the Evers administration, with Appleton and the Fox River Valley, and that will bring us the service that every part of the city needs and deserves.
The challenge that we often find ourselves in when we're talking about the future of transportation is we end up sort of talking about, what do we do first? Do we need to invest in facilities first? Do we need to invest in vehicles first? Do we need to really prioritize chasing bus rapid transit? And communities that make meaningful progress are successful in articulating how important it's going to be for our community to make progress on all three at the same time. That, on the council, I served on the Long-Range Transportation Planning Master Committee, or whatever it was called. We call it Madison in Motion. And in order for us to be able to move forward for transit for the city and for the North Side, we need our community to have a shared commitment to advancing all of these simultaneously. What that's going to look like specifically here on the North Side, some of those pieces in more of the short term are going to look like increased bus service late at night, working with employers to do shared ride systems, and thank you.
A regional transit authority is a model used by other communities across this country to fund truly regional transit systems. And we will have to work with communities like Appleton and Rhinelander and southeastern Wisconsin and Racine if we're going to flip Republican votes in order to get a regional transit authority. But I'm going to tell you something that is maybe hard to hear. Robin Voss does not like buses. He doesn't like Madison either. So we can wait 10 years for Robin Voss to have a change of heart, or we can trust that Mayor Soglin, who has just announced that the Republican legislature are enemies to be stood up to, that he is going to convince them to swing to a regional transit authority while we do nothing on transit, or we can choose to do something on transit. There are other models of funding that we can choose to pursue, but the biggest thing that we need is political courage to pursue those avenues, because you all can't wait for a transit system to be fixed.
I agree. And as the equity coordinator who may not have a job, one of the things that I absolutely know is that we will have a regional transit. And a very real solution now, how do we get buses to the north side? One of the things that I do, because I've sat with the Transportation Committee, with Council, and various other committees, we have to distribute buses now where people have the greatest need. Currently, the majority of our buses go east-west. We have 9 or 8 neighborhoods that are on the outer regions of the cities that don't get buses. They have 2 to 3 transit. They have 2 to 3 hour transits throughout the city. People who are most impacted, transit dependent, need more buses, not people who have 2 to 3 cars and free bus passes. It's an easy solution. It's an easy fix. Let's address the things that are easier to take care of. I was hired to look at these issues. That's what I would do first. Northside, you would get buses if I was your mayor.
Thank you.
Jara's going to ask our last question from the audience, and then we're going to wrap up for the evening with the closing remarks from the candidates.
We have heard a lot of great ideas tonight, but any new program will cost money. Where will you find the funding and how will you prioritize?
Now there's the question. Lots of promises, we're going to have free bus service, we're going to pay for this, that, and the other thing. And unfortunately, it's on that ground, that question, that I've had such great challenges with the City Council. How do you set these priorities? Because we were on this horrible trajectory in terms of the amount of debt we were creating. We were on a horrible trajectory, which I successfully slowed, but I'll be very blunt. I don't think it's been slowed enough. Fortunately, the last 2 years, the City Council has taken this matter, this challenge, much more seriously. Because we have to understand somebody's paying for this. 75% of the city revenues come from the property tax. And so it's critical that we build the property tax base through private investment and then spend that money wisely. I stand by my record and your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
So making decisions about how we're going to spend our money is critical. One of the big opportunities that a mayor has is to be able to prioritize how we're going to distribute the city's funds, but then also prioritize how we're going to engage the private sector and find opportunities for public-private partnership. There is a tremendous amount of opportunity to be doing that, and there's a tremendous opportunity for us to be proactively working to increase the value of our property. One of the things that I'm going to do as mayor is take a serious look at how we can develop the future of our city by proactively understanding what pieces of land are currently undervalued and where we can promote development so that our land has greater value and so that the distribution of costs of taxes isn't burdened on us as our city continues to grow.
Thank you.
It is
Sure that we are setting shared priorities and that we can build a budget together that everyone can support. And then I think we need to make sure that we support our fixed and low-income households who are particularly hit by high property tax and help them save money in other parts of their budgets through things like energy and water efficiency.
Thank you.
So, Jamin is going to read our final question, and Toriana Petaway will answer first. But before we go to that, our Executive Director, Anna Tucker, has a quick announcement.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm Anna Tucker, and I'm the Executive Director of the Northside Planning Council, the organization that hosted this tonight. First of all, thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for coming despite the weather forecast. And that's actually what I wanted to say quickly before we wrap up. Just some logistical concerns. Our wonderful staff here at Warner Park Center have warned us that the pavement is now just sheer ice. And so I want to make sure that everybody's able to get out to their cars safely. And so our thought was that if Any of you who might be braver and hardier than I am might be interested or able to get your car at the end here and be willing to drive people to their cars in the parking lot, particularly some folks who might be less comfortable doing that. Just let me know. I'll be at the back when this is over, and we can kind of coordinate a little taxi service to make sure that people can get to their vehicles. So thanks. I'll let us finish.
What is your favorite part of the North Side? When was the last time you visited the North Side, not including campaign events? And what did you do while you were here?
So my favorite thing to do on the North Side is come to the Mallards. My kids love coming here, and I actually like watching the games. But what happens is that I have the two little people sitting in the audience, and they get distracted with all of the activities happening outside of the games. So I oftentimes don't get a chance to sit in the stands. I end up running behind them. And so that's what I love doing when I'm on the North Side, besides seeing my friends on the North Side. I have a lot of friends that live on the North Side, but we actually come to see the games on the North Side.
Hard to pick a favorite. I live on what I like to call the near North Side, but I think one of my favorite things is when I walk into this building, the sense of energy and community that I get every time I walk in. Another favorite thing is the sunrise muffin at Manna Cafe. And another favorite thing is the feed kitchens and the great work that gets done there. The last time I was up here was Monday morning. I went to Lakeview Library, and then I stopped at Willie Street for a few essential items. And I wanted to take the last 30 seconds that I have to remind you that my name is Satya Rhodes Conway, and I'm running for mayor because everyone should have the opportunity to thrive. I hope tonight that I've earned your vote. You can early vote now at Lakeview Library, or any library, or the clerk's office, or please vote on February 19th. And if you want to learn more, it's satyaformadison.com.
Well, the last time I was here was last Thursday at the airport, but I don't think that counts. Before that, a week or so, 2 weeks earlier, I can't remember which came first. I had a visit with Carmen Parco and some of the residents at Packers Avenue, and then I was visiting our middle daughter who lives here on the North Side. In terms of favorites, it's tough. I obviously have a great love and affection for this building and what it represents. I love visiting my daughter, but maybe a little Italian cafe, La Bella Italia, over on Sherman Avenue is up on that list as well. I hope I haven't offended any other Northside restaurants, but that's the way it is.
So in terms of last time here, I guess I'm actually here all the time because I'm on the Parks Commission, so we meet in this building every month. But most recently, I was here at Bear and Mile for brunch just recently. I think that was Thursday or Wednesday of last week. So that was really fun. My favorite thing, I got two little kids at home, Hannah, who's 3, and Cyrus, who's 10 months. It's Cyrus, who I caught this cold from. But Hannah loves the Mallards, and in the morning time, we are either playing pretend basketball or pretend baseball. When we play pretend baseball, she thinks of the Mallards game that she loves to go to, and she says, "You're on the field. You're a pretend baseball player." So that's probably going to be one of my favorite things.
So I have this guilty pleasure, and it's I love Chinese food, and I can eat a lot of it at any given moment. So there's this little restaurant kind of near Mana Cafe, kind of near the restaurant you were at. Yeah. Where I love to go and get egg fouillon and some dumplings and just devour it all. So I was there fairly recently, I think it was a couple months ago, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But one of the last times that is a memory of mine is, it was over the summer actually, not my most recent, but over the summer, and I was visiting friends who live on Superior Street, which is where my wife and I got our start there. We bought our first duplex there. And we were reminiscing, enjoying the summer day, and thinking about where life had taken all of us from there. And since that time, I've started chairing a city committee working on climate change. I started working on environmental issues. I'm now the executive director of River Alliance of Wisconsin. And now I'm running for mayor. This place has always been and will be a place of beginnings for me, and that's how I think of the North Side.
Thank you for your time.
And that will conclude our Northside Planning Council Mayor Candidates Forum. So I'd like to thank all of our candidates for As mentioned, if you're willing to volunteer to help people get to their cars, please be here in the back of the room. Also, we have an Alder District 12 Candidates Forum next Wednesday, same place, same time, and we hope to see you there. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Ensure that we are setting shared priorities and that we can build a budget together that everyone can support. And then I think we need to make sure that we support our fixed and low-income households who are particularly hit by high property tax and help them save money in other parts of their budgets through things like energy and water efficiency.
Thank you.
So, Jamin is going to read our final question, and Toriana Petaway will answer first. But before we go to that, our Executive Director, Anna Tucker, has a quick announcement.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm Anna Tucker, and I'm the Executive Director of the Northside Planning Council, the organization that hosted this tonight. First of all, thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for coming despite the weather forecast. And that's actually what I wanted to say quickly before we wrap up. Just some logistical concerns. Our wonderful staff here at Warner Park Center have warned us that the pavement is now just sheer ice. And so I want to make sure that everybody is able to get out to their cars safely. And so our thought was that if any of you who might be braver and hardier than I am might be interested or able to get your car at the end here and be willing to drive people to their cars in the parking lot, particularly some folks who might be less comfortable doing that, just let me know. I'll be at the back when this is over, and we can kind of coordinate a little taxi service to make sure that people can get to their vehicles. So thanks, I'll let us finish.
What is your favorite part of the North Side? When was the last time you visited the North Side, not including campaign events? And what did you do while you were here?
So my favorite thing to do on the North Side is come to the Mallards. My kids love coming here, and I actually like watching the games. But what happens is that I have the two little people sitting in the audience, and they get distracted with all of the activities happening outside of the games. So I oftentimes don't get a chance to sit in the stands. I end up running behind them. And so that's what I love doing when I'm on the North Side, besides seeing my friends on the North Side. I have a lot of friends that live on the North Side, but we actually come to see the games on the North Side.
Hard to pick a favorite. I live on what I like to call the near North Side, but I think one of my favorite things is when I walk into this building, the sense of energy and community that I get every time I walk in. Another favorite thing is the sunrise muffin at Manna Cafe. And another favorite thing is the feed kitchens and the great work that gets done there. The last time I was up here was Monday morning. I went to Lakeview Library and then I stopped at Willie Street for a few essential items. And I want to take the last 30 seconds that I have to remind you that my name is Satya Rhodes Conway and I'm running for mayor because everyone should have the opportunity to thrive. I hope tonight that I've earned your vote. You can early vote now at Lakeview Library or any library or the clerk's office, or please vote on February 19th. And if you want to learn more, it's satyaformadison.com.
Well, the last time I was here was last Thursday at the airport, but I don't think that counts. Before that, a week or so 2 weeks earlier, I can't remember which came first. I had a visit with Carmen Porco and some of the residents at Packers Avenue, and then I was visiting our middle daughter who lives here on the north side. In terms of favorites, it's tough. I obviously have a great love and affection for this building and what it represents. I love visiting my daughter, but maybe a little Italian cafe, La Bella Italia, over on Sherman Avenue is up on that list as well. I hope I haven't offended any other Northside restaurants, but that's the way it is.
So in terms of last time here, I guess I'm actually here all the time because I'm on the Parks Commission, so we meet in this building every month. But most recently, I was here at Bear and Model for brunch just recently. I think that was Thursday or Wednesday of last week. So that was really fun. My favorite thing, I got two little kids at home, Hannah, who's 3, and Cyrus, who's 10 months. It's Cyrus who I caught this cold from. But Hannah loves the mallards, and in the morning time, we are either playing pretend basketball or pretend baseball. When we play pretend baseball, she thinks of the mallards game that she loves to go to, and she says, "You're on the field. You're a pretend baseball player." So that's probably going to be one of my favorite things.
So I have this guilty pleasure, and it's I love Chinese food, and I can eat a lot of it at any given moment. So there's this little restaurant kind of near Manna Cafe, kind of near the restaurant you were at. Yeah. Where I love to go and get egg fouillon and some dumplings and just devour it all. So I was there fairly recently, I think it was a couple months ago, and thoroughly enjoyed it. But one of the last times that is a memory of mine is, it was over the summer actually, not my most recent, but over the summer, and I was visiting friends who live on Superior Street, which is where my wife and I got our start there. We bought our first duplex there. And we were reminiscing, enjoying the summer day, and thinking about where life had taken all of us from there. And since that time, I've started chairing a city committee working on climate change. I started working on environmental issues. I'm now the executive director of River Alliance of Wisconsin. And now I'm running for mayor. This place has always been and will be a place of beginnings for me, and that's how I think of the North Side.
Thank you for your time.
And that will conclude our Northside Planning Council Mayor Candidates Forum. So I'd like to thank all of our candidates for a couple of things, as I've mentioned. mentioned, if you're willing to volunteer to help people get to their cars, please be here in the back of the room. Also, we have an Alder, District 12 candidates for next Wednesday, same place, same time, and we hope to see you there. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.